In the small town of Southingen, Jesus.
A few minutes later,
In the small town of Southington, Connecticut, lies a house with a history most would rather forget. But for one family who later went on to live there, this seemingly ordinary home became a nightmare, one they never saw coming. A family whose own story is often overshadowed by the more infamous haunting of that home. In the late 1980s, after the Snedeker family left the house due to what they claimed to be terrifying paranormal activity, Jim and Jackie Post moved in, unknowingly stepping into a legacy of fear. What they encountered inside the walls of their new home would change their lives forever and move them into the neighborhood of the extremely strange. Beginning in 1936 and for several decades, the house operated as the Halahan Funeral Home. The Halahan Funeral Home eventually relocated to Plantsville, Connecticut in the mid-1980s, where it became the Bergen Halahan Funeral Home, now known simply as Bergen Funeral Home. The vacant property was purchased by Daniel Kern of Kern Realty. Initially, Kern planned to convert the building into a real estate office, with some reports suggesting it could have been developed into a medical office building. However, zoning issues thwarted these plans, and instead Kern transformed the building into a duplex, with apartments on the upper and lower levels. While there was nothing particularly remarkable about the property at that time, it was soon to gain notoriety when a New York family moved in, forever altering the building's legacy in the area. In 1986, Carmen and Alan Snedeker, along with their 4 children, relocated from a home in upstate New York in order to live closer to the John Dempsey Hospital at University of Connecticut Health Center in Farmington. The Snedeker's eldest son, Philip, was suffering from Hodgkin's disease, and the university's hospital offered treatment they hoped would heal the teenager of his serious illness. The family apparently settled on renting the house on Meriden Avenue due to it being very affordable for its size and location. The Snedekers moved in on June 30th, 1986, and took up residence in the downstairs apartment of the property. It has been said that the Snedeker family did not discover the house's former use as a funeral home until after they had moved in, although neighbors and their former landlords dispute these claims. According to their accounts, the basement rooms used to prepare the former funeral home's deceased clientele were obscured from view by construction materials, and Carmen did not notice it during her initial walkthrough, and were only discovered after the family had moved in. Some items from the mortuary trade were apparently left behind in the basement, including a blood drainage pit, a box of coffin handles, and a casket lift. This area of the home became the bedroom for Philip and his younger brother Brad, as there were no rooms large enough on the floor above to accommodate them. Over the next 2 years, the Snedekers reportedly experienced a significant amount of paranormal phenomena that left the family shaken and, in some cases, bruised and battered. Today, the case is widely known in the paranormal field as the Southington Funeral Home case, and in films and books as the haunting in Connecticut. Exact details of what the family was said to have experienced is often skewed, as the most readily available sources of information of the story are the dramatizations in books, television, and film form that even the family admits features a variety of embellishments. Regardless, there are some details that the family has confirmed and or were part of the initial news reports. Ed and Lorraine Warren's subsequent involvement in the case included conducting a series of investigations and documenting the family's experiences. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, reportedly sensed strong negative energy in the home, while Ed, a demonologist, believed that the house was inhabited by malevolent spirits, some of whom were reportedly trying to attach themselves to the family. The Warrens conducted a series of spiritual cleansings and blessings in an attempt to rid the house of its dark influences, and they reportedly had some success in reducing the intensity of the activity. After the Snedekers moved out of the Haunting in Connecticut house, Jim and Jackie Post and their family moved there in 1995, unaware of its history of hauntings. Their experiences reportedly mirrored some of the terrifying phenomena that the Snedekers had encountered, further suggesting the presence of lingering malevolent entities. The Posts, like many buyers looking for a family home, were likely drawn to the property's size, location, and proximity to local amenities, especially since the house offered ample space and had architectural features that could appeal to buyers unaware of its history. Their lack of knowledge about the home's background made it possible for them to move in without any initial fear or suspicion, only to discover strange occurrences over time. The house's history as a site for embalming and funeral services was not widely publicized, and they were not informed about any supernatural claims tied to the property. The Posts initially experienced minor oddities such as unexplained noises, items disappearing and reappearing in strange places, and a feeling of heaviness in certain areas of the home. As time went on, the encounters became increasingly unsettling. Like the Snedekers, the Posts frequently witnessed shadow figures, particularly in the basement. The basement had served as the funeral home's embalming room, and it seemed to be the epicenter of much of the paranormal activity. Jim and Jackie reported seeing these figures as fleeting shadows or dark masses that would move out of the corner of their eyes, giving them an overwhelming sense of dread. At times, the figures reportedly seemed to shift closer to them before disappearing. At one point, an envelope with $500 in it went missing from a chest full of sweaters and other items. Jim claimed they turned the house upside down searching for it, but it never reappeared. The Posts often experienced sudden, drastic temperature drops in certain parts of the house, particularly near the basement stairs. These cold spots were described as unnaturally frigid, much colder than any of the other parts of the house, and would occur without any drafts or open windows nearby. These spots seemed to move, which only added to the fear and mystery surrounding the phenomenon. Jackie especially felt an intense, almost suffocating sensation as she was being constantly watched, which was strongest in the areas near the basement and certain dark corners of the house. This feeling of being observed would often escalate into a sense of oppression, making her anxious and uneasy. The feeling became so constant that it affected her ability to relax in her own home, and she started to experience growing anxiety and fear as a result. One night, expecting some friends over, Jim was in the shower when he heard a car arrive outside, then heard some people coming up the stairs. They called to him, and he informed them he was in the shower and he'd be right out. They said they would return after they went for some food. When Jim finished and was getting ready, he heard a car again pull up, footsteps coming up the stairs, and the same friends had the same conversation with him, telling him they had just arrived and had not visited earlier. Jackie reported feeling invisible hands touch her on several occasions, especially when she was alone. These sensations were often light touches on her shoulders or arms, but were enough to leave her feeling shaken. At times, she felt as though an unseen force was brushing past her, even when no one else was around. Jim, too, described feeling strange sensations, though he was often dismissive at first, until the occurrences became more persistent. On another occasion, Jackie claimed to have seen the apparition of her recently deceased mother hovering, almost floating, in a corner of their bedroom. She was dressed in the same flannel nightgown she often wore when she was alive. A friend of theirs, who was helping with some interior painting, remained behind to keep working while Jim and Jackie went out for the evening. He suddenly felt a presence that caused the hair on the back of his neck to stand up. He looked to see no one there and returned to painting, but it was then he felt someone pushing against him from behind and forcing him against the wall. He nervously ran down the stairs, and at that point he describes feeling like he was going up in an escalator that was actually going down. When he finally reached his car to drive off, a transformer exploded in the street. The supernatural activity seemed to have a psychological toll on the Posts, leading to strain in their marriage. Both Jim and Jackie described feeling abnormally irritable and prone to intense arguments, often sparked by minor issues. Jim believed that something in the house was affecting his mood, making him feel unusually tense and frustrated, while Jackie felt that the house was impacting her mental well-being, making her fearful and even paranoid. The family reported hearing noises, footsteps, especially late at night. These sounds would sometimes seem to come from the basement or other unoccupied rooms. The voices were usually faint and unintelligible, creating an eerie, unsettling effect, while the footsteps would start and stop abruptly, as if someone were pacing or moving through the house. The Posts were particularly unnerved by these sounds, as they seemed to have no source, and occurred regularly enough to suggest that something unseen was occupying the home with them. Similar to what the Snedekers reported, the Posts occasionally experienced a strong foul odor of decay or rot that would permeate certain rooms, particularly the basement. This smell would appear suddenly, linger for a while, and then disappear just as mysteriously. Despite attempts to identify a source, such as a dead animal or plumbing issues, no logical explanation could be found. This unexplained stench added to the overall sense of unease and dread in the house. Oddly, they became informed of the house's history on Halloween night, when Jim asked the first-floor tenant if he wanted to share trick-or-treating duties. The tenant told him they don't do that there anymore because of the weirdness that accompanies it, with people coming from all over lining up on the sidewalk and down the street, many hoping to return later to go inside the house. The tenant would go on to show Jim a tabloid listing the most haunted houses in the world, along with accompanying photos, one of which showed the house he and Jackie had just moved into. The Posts eventually sought help and began exploring the home's history, which led them to the Snedekers' story. Learning about the prior experiences seemed to validate their own encounters, as they recognized similar phenomena. In response to the intense experiences, Jim and Jackie reportedly attempted various methods to cleanse the home, from blessing ceremonies to spiritual rituals, but nothing seemed to alleviate the haunting. A cousin of Jim's, who claimed to have mediumship abilities, told him that she felt a female presence there who was fond of him. She further explained that this spirit was trying to cause friction between Jim and Jackie. Eventually, they reached out to the paranormal community when they found themselves overwhelmed by the strange occurrences. While details on exactly who they consulted are less widely publicized than the Snedekers' collaboration with Ed and Lorraine Warren, it's believed that the Posts sought the help of paranormal investigators to try to bring peace to the home. Although the family tried to address the haunting through these actions and other interventions, the oppressive feeling in the house lingered. This, combined with the strain it was causing on their mental and emotional health, eventually led them to distance themselves from the dark energy there and move out of the house. After leaving, the Posts reportedly distanced themselves from the property and its notoriety, opting for a quieter life away from the paranormal spotlight. Their preference for privacy and the relatively lower profile of their story means that public records or media sources have not provided extensive updates on their lives since leaving the haunted home. They seem to have returned to a private lifestyle, with few or no public statements regarding their time in the house or where they went afterward. As a footnote, the missing envelope with $500 in it turned up in the same box it went missing from 5 years and 3 moves later. Their experiences have been noted by paranormal enthusiasts as further evidence of the home's allegedly haunted nature, cementing the reputation of the former funeral parlor as a site of residual and possibly malevolent supernatural activity. Senator Chris Murphy, who represents the state of Connecticut, also lived in the haunting in Connecticut house long after it gained notoriety from the Snedeker story and subsequent media adaptations. He lived there from December of 1996 to the summer of 1998, a period when no reports of paranormal activity were widely known or publicized. Fresh out of Williams College, Murphy moved into a second-floor apartment in that very house with 2 childhood friends, unaware of its haunted past. They'd found the apartment through a newspaper advertisement. Murphy was an aide to then-State House Majority Leader George Jepson at the time. The rent was pretty cheap and it was gorgeous. There were hardwood floors and lots of space, Murphy recalled. The trio thought nothing of the 2 large stone pillars in the front yard or the massive parking lot out back, but soon found out the building was once a funeral home. Murphy went on to say, "A plumber came by the second day we were there and was looking around and saying, 'Wow, I've never been in the haunted house before.' We were floored, but I don't think any of us were predisposed to believe the story. None of us looked too hard for the ghosts." Indeed, Murphy said that the second floor had always been an apartment, even when the funeral home operated out of the first floor and basement. They also heard from a previous tenant who claimed the ghost story was fiction and made up by the family as a ruse to get out of paying rent they owed. Murphy has spoken about his time in the house, mostly in interviews where people were curious if he experienced anything paranormal there. He has consistently noted that he remembers the house as a normal home, free of anything remotely supernatural. The Snedekers' claims of living in a haunted house in Southington, Connecticut, have faced significant skepticism through the years. Their story gained widespread attention through books and movies, most notably The Haunting in Connecticut. However, skeptics have highlighted inconsistencies in their accounts and suggested financial motives, something the family to this day strongly denies. Ray Garton, the author of the book In a Dark Place, claims he was instructed to embellish details by the Snedekers and the Warrens, the paranormal investigators involved. But the other side of that coin is the story of Jim and Jackie Post, to whom the house served as a place where their reality collided with the paranormal, forever altering the course of their lives. The Posts eventually left, but their experiences remain a part of the mysterious history that still lingers about that house. So whether you believe in the paranormal or not, their story is a reminder that sometimes the past refuses to stay buried, and the echoes of those who came before can shape the lives of those who follow.